reason that you're here tonight is because we could stand here, we can give you a facts and figure lecture of all the rockets that fell into Israel last summer and all the people who were killed, and tell you that Hamas uses human shields, but fundamentally you know that, and you don't need me to tell you that. But when you hear somebody on the front lines who's there who can articulate it for yourself, it's a horse of a different color. It's what our opponents have been doing for 45 years, and that's, I think, what we're just only now learning to do as well. So that's really why he's here, and why you can hopefully take as much out of it as possible. So he's going to speak. After that, we're going to do the workshop. We have some refreshments for you as well. So if there's any questions, come speak with me. But otherwise, enjoy. Thank you so much.
אהלן.
אהלן.
ערב טוב, אני מצטער, אני לא מדבר באנגלית. סתם. No, I'm joking. Hi, good evening everyone, thank you for coming. It's good to be back in Canada. The last time I was here was in February, and it was -20, so it's very nice to be here now. I'm going to introduce myself and then tell you a few stories, and then we see where we're going to be, you know. The night is young. My name is Adler. I'm 23 years old. Originally I'm from Kfar Vradim. It's a small place in the north of Israel. There is 4,000 Jewish people over there. Recently I moved to Jerusalem. I'm going to start in a Hebrew University in Sunday. It's coming close now. And I'm going to start political science and international relations. I have two siblings. My brother is 18, my sister, she's 16. My brother going to join the army in January, going to go to the Navy. I have two dogs, Lilo and Chipo. They're very cute, Labradors. And that's it, I think, about myself. Now you know me a little bit. I drafted the army in 2010. I was 18. In Israel, the army is mandatory. You have to go to the army or do national service. If it's national service, you can volunteer in daycare, high schools, hospitals. I choose to do the army, and in age of 18 I was drafted to the paratroopers, and I start from nothing. I was maggot, and after 2 years and 8 months I became an officer. In the IDF I was first lieutenant, and I had 40 soldiers in age of 20, and had a responsibility about everything, when they eat, when they sleep, and you can think about the others. And it's a big responsibility that I never understood it until later in my service. Those who watch the movie Beneath the Helmet,
Yes.
that's the part that I start to filming when I got my soldiers. After I finished with my soldiers, I went to the Lebanon borders. I was with them for 6 months, and after that I was sending to officer course. I was commander in officer course. In age of 21, with 1 year's experience, I need to teach now how to be officers. It's like for students, it's like after you finish your first year, you're trying to be the professor of your class. So I finished that, and before I finished my service, it was the last operation, Protective Edge, and I took part with my soldiers. We've been there for almost 60 days inside of Gaza. And after the operation in December, I was released and I finished my service. I was serving 4 years and 2 months. And it's very interesting how I got to speak. And as a commander, I had two goals. The first goal is to train my soldiers and to make them the best soldiers. Why? Because I want them to be the best soldiers to protect the country, to protect the Jewish people. The second is to give them the why. And this question, why, it's hard. I'm kind of a guy that always asks why. Why I'm speaking, why it's cold, why it's hot, why I need to wear a jacket, why. Everything I ask why. And I understood in my life, if I don't have the answer to my question, it's very hard for me to do it. And sometimes I'm not capable to do it. And I wanted to bring my soldiers why we're here, why we're drafting to the army. And it's much harder than just train them. So I finished my service in Jerusalem. They make the film Beneath the Helmet. They asked me, hey Eden, now you finish your army service. You are a free man. You can do whatever you want. Do you want to go to speak in North America about the movie, about your experience? And I wasn't so sure, and I answered, I don't know. And then they told me that we're going to pay you, we're going to fly you, we're going to give you a credit card.
Oh, go.
So what was my answer? I don't know. I don't know if I'm the right person. I don't know if I can speak English so good. And public speaking, wow. And honestly, I didn't know why I need to speak. And as the rest of my friends who finished the service and the rest of people of Israel, the first thing they do after they finish their army service is travel.
Yeah.
I think we are the most little country, but that we are everywhere. Our people is everywhere. I remember I went to Iceland for 2 months before my army service, and we went to a glacier for 4 days. Nobody was there. We finally got to the top of the glacier. We sit, we open our coffee, relaxing. After maybe 2 hours, we hear like 2 guys from Israel like speaking Hebrew, like, oh, finally we arrived here. And like, what is that? Like Iceland, nowhere? And they're there. So I chose to do a month in Europe because I didn't know how much time I want to start university when. And it was last December, and it was amazing. And I started in London. And London in Christmas time, those who've been probably know it's how beautiful, the decorations and the lights. And for me, it was the first time. I was in shock. And I went to a big Hanukkah party because my mom told me you have to go there, kosher place, kosher ger. And it was a very interesting party, and I met a lot of interesting people, and I have interesting conversation with one of the guys, and he's a student in Oxford University. He's supposed to be a lawyer. He's supposed to finish this year. And we have a talk, and after 10 minutes we want to become a friend. And those days, how you became a friend? By Facebook. So I asked him what is his name because I want to add him in Facebook.
Abdullah.
And he didn't answer. And I asked again he didn't answer. And I asked him again, and finally he answered, originally my name is, but I changed my name. And I look at him, why? And he said, I don't want to be Jewish.
Yo.
And I look at this guy, and I was in shock. I wasn't prepared for that. And I didn't know what to do. And I'm going to tell you a secret. I was born and raised in Israel. This is not a secret. I don't know if you noticed, but it's easy to be Jewish in Israel. You wake up, you're Jewish. You go to sleep, you're Jewish. Everything is kosher around you. In Pesach, we got matzot. In Hanukkah, we got suganiot. Like easy life. And one of our big innovation, it's kosher pizza for Pesach. And this is my first time that I meet this guy, and I don't know what to do, and doesn't want to be Jewish, and I don't know what to. So I was wondering maybe think something differently about Israel, because Israel is a country, and Judaism it's a religion, maybe. So I asked this guy what to think about Israel, and then he started yelling at me, oh, Israel occupied the Palestinians, and they do that. And he looked in my eyes, and he said, how many kids did you kill in the last operation? I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. Like how you can ask me kind of a question like that? I know you 10 minutes. So I asked this guy if we can meet in the next morning, grab a cup of coffee, maybe discuss about it. I asked him for 5 minutes. What do you think? He agree or not?
No.
Actually, he agreed. I was surprised also. And from 5 minutes, we sat for almost 6 hours. And I show him the movie Beneath the Helmet, and I show him more clips of Stand With Us. And the most important thing, I share with my stories. And I share with him how it is to live in Israel, and what is for me to be a Jewish, and what is to be in the West Bank, and what is to be in the last operation. And immediately I saw in his eyes, it's open in his mind. Wow, nobody told me that. Wow, nobody showed me that. I didn't know that. So I was really interested from what he get his information, and asked him, from what you get his information? And he told me for 4 things: television, newspaper, Twitter, and Facebook. And that's the word he described it to me. 80% from my knowledge, it's from Facebook. And I'm sitting there and I look at him. You're a student in Oxford, right? You're going to be a lawyer, right? How can you be knowledgeable by Facebook? And he told me, I open my Facebook and I scroll down, see pictures, see videos. I got a story, I understand it. In that moment, I understood why I need to speak. There is so much big misinformation, and how people see us, in it, the IDF soldiers, the Israeli outside, and I'm kind of an army guy, and I was staying in someone's family, and their kids call me Army Man. So I'm going to stick with this nickname. But for me, it's another war. And when we're going to step out from this door, we need to be prepared for this war. And this war, it's much harder than the war I was used to. The war I was used to, you see the terrorist, you point your gun, you load your magazine, the first one to shoot. These enemies, they are everywhere. You open your news, they're there. You open your Facebook, they're over there. You open your Instagram, they're there. And for me, it was important to take part of this war. So I came back to Jerusalem and I said to Jerusalem, okay, I know why I need to speak, send me. And they did send me last winter, and it was the coldest winter in my life, and I think also in North America. And they sent me to Rochester, New York. It was minus 40, and then to Toronto, and I'd been here 18 hours, it was enough for me. I went to Los Angeles, it was warm, and then Chicago, but it was amazing, the experience that I had to meet the Jewish communities, to meet the people, the students. I spoke in more than 15 universities, 10 high schools, Jewish community, I don't know how much, but and all the time was people in the audience that came to me after and say, I didn't know that. So this is why I'm here. I'm going to share 2 stories from the last summer, the Operation Protective Edge, and then we'll open it for questions and answer. So the last Operation Protective Edge started from operation a little bit before, and the name of the operation was Brother Keeper, when the 3 boys were kidnapped and murdered in the West Bank. And I'm going to take you in time machine now, not so long. It was May last year, in 2014, and I remember I was in officer course. I have my soldiers, and week from graduation. Graduation is the same graduation of high schools and university. Everyone come, parents, grandmother, uncle, aunts, everyone come to this graduation. In the end, everyone throw the hats, we throw our berets, and it's a very happy day. And we were week to the graduation, and this week you don't do nothing. Just clean your room and sit and complaining about life. And I remember we opened the news, and my soldiers saw that those 3 boys were kidnapped, and they say, and I told to them in the same day, probably tomorrow they will find them and everything will be fine. We woke up to the next morning and we found ourselves in helicopters flying from the desert, Mitzpe Ramon, to the West Bank, to Hebron, and start searching. During the day, we're 60 guys, sometimes 120 guys, walking in one line, start to search the boys for any clue, for their shoes, socks, piece of shirt, just to know where they are. And during the night, we're arresting people from Hamas in the West Bank. And that was the routine during the day. You're searching, during the night you're arresting. If you're following, you're understanding there is no sleeping. And that was almost 7 days like that, and it was the day of the graduation. We need to finish the course. Those officers need to send to their company, have a new platoons. So we're going back to the base, this time no parents, no nothing, very small. We arrived to the base, shower, ceremony, go to your unit. 3 days later they find the boys, they were dead. By the time they find the boys, we put a lot of pressure on Hamas in the West Bank by arresting their guys. And Hamas in Gaza started to increase the number of the rockets to Israel. And the number was very high. We're talking about almost 100 rockets in a day to a major city. If it's Ashkelon, Ashdod, Sderot, and the small cities near to Gaza. And the government decided that we need to move from the West Bank to Gaza. That's what we did. My unit wasn't supposed to be there. We are officer training course. We train the officers, and that's it. That's our mission. By my commander, he was a great guy. He was amazing, and he believed by leading the soldiers by personal example. What you do, they will do. And he told us, we are officer of infantry unit. We're supposed to be there, because that's our personal example. We are officers. We are the first to lead. And that's what happened. We went there, and our first 24 hours we didn't do anything. We played sheshbesh. And after 24 hours we got our first mission. Our first mission was to switch Givati. Givati is one of the infantry unit in the IDF, and we switched them. They at the time they protect the border. Now we are protecting the border, and they're supposed to go inside of Gaza. And I got my first mission. My first mission is to secure the Nachal Brigade, another infantry unit in Bet Hanun, that's in the north of Gaza, one of the cities north of Gaza. And I need to watch the buildings inside and see there is no terrorists pointing on our soldiers. Could be rockets, could be anti-tank missiles, and could be sharpshooters. That was my mission, to look for them. And you understand. Day 1 going well, day 2 going well. In day 3, one of my sharpshooters recognized in one of the structure buildings. He sees a squad of 6 people with RPG, anti-tank missiles, and a few sharpshooters. They are in the second floor. They start to put their gear inside of the buildings, look on our soldiers. Eden, this is your time. You waited 3 days. You find them. I call in the radio to my commander and I ask for permission to shoot. In my squad, I have sharpshooters and I have anti-tank special missile. This missile you can direct them, so he can preemptive the strikes before we launch. So I have camera on the missile, camera on me, and while it's in there I can navigate and I can see all the time what the missile see. And it's very direct. I want it next this window, it's hit this window. It's a big innovation of Israel. We sell it to the States. So I call in the radio and ask for permission to shoot my missile, my special missile. And he said, no, check, there is no one in the building. I checked, I said, no one in the building. Can I have the permission? He said, no, check again. checking again. This is the third time I asking, can I have the permission? He finally said, if you sure there is no one in the building, you can shoot. And I got the green light. I launched my missile. I navigate him in the air. 10 seconds before it's supposed to hit the building. 10 seconds, we recognize the kids in the roof. I have 10 seconds to make a decision. I'm 21. I can call no one. And I have the responsibility on me. And I have 10 seconds to make the call. In 10 seconds, I can cross the room. In 10 seconds, I maybe can take out my shoes. And now I have 10 seconds to decide. I launched the missile in the ground. Immediately, the kids were okay. Hamas guys so far okay. Our soldier okay now. And this game, Hamas play with us. All the operation, all the 60 days, this cynical game to use kids as a human shield, use women, use even animals. They sent one time a donkey with bomb on us. And they went back straight to the tunnels. The Hamas guys recognized it, that we were on them. So they left everything in the second floor there in the building. They ran away back to the tunnel. And we didn't saw him. After a few hours later, I'm almost 4 days in this ambush. My commander told me, Eden, it's time to get yourself like refreshed, go shower. And I really needed it because I felt like a schnitzel. I sweat there and all the scents like on me. And it was 2 in the morning. We got to the back to the base. We got showers and we got like leftovers of barbecue. We eat that. I'm very happy and I have interesting conversation with my commander. And he told me, Eden, it's time to have a haircut. And I look at him. 2 in the morning, middle of the war. That's what you have to say? Not like good job, something to improve. Said you have to lead your soldier by personal example. You have to have a haircut. You have to have some discipline. And I said yes, whatever. And I went to sleep. And 3 hours later, I get called in the radio. Eden, wake up your soldier. Something happened. I wake up my soldiers, we put our equipment, and while we put the equipment, we hear that there is a few suspicious characters near to the fence. They're 200 meters from Niram and 1.5 kilometers from Sderot. 200 meters, it's maybe 10, it's 2 minutes run. And 1.5 kilometers, you can do it in 10 minutes. So I wake up my soldiers, we put the gear, and now I'm going to tell you the part that I didn't know. What I didn't know, it was 2 squads of Hamas. Each squad was 6 guys. They came out and they were full IDF uniform from the bottom to the top. IDF boots, IDF uniform, IDF vest, IDF helmet, and IDF cover of the helmet. The only thing wasn't of us was their gun, and we couldn't see it. The time is 5:30 in the morning. The vision is not so clear, and the night vision you can't see because it's too light, and the day vision you can't see because it's too dark. So what we could see, it's like the suspicious character. My commander, he was ready first, and he grabbed like few soldiers to his jeep. They went to check it first, and they got into an ambush. The first squad shot an RPG anti-tank missile on the car. That hit the driver. The driver flew all over immediately. My commander and the 2 guys in the back, so far okay. They went out of the vehicle, and the second squad started to shoot from close range, like we are now. My commander got 2 bullets in his head and he fell immediately to the ground. 2 soldiers from the back, so far they're okay. They started to shoot back. and one of the soldiers died, and the other managed to shoot 80 bullets. So those who know, 80 bullets, we're talking about 3 magazines. In each magazine we have 30 bullets, so it's mean, those who more know, it's mean that you need to put one in, take one out, put one in, take one out, put one in. It's a lot of work, and you need to shoot. He got hit by 20 bullets in his body, and he managed to shoot, but he died. The second squad trying to take his body and kidnap his body. All that, I don't know yet. My soldiers are ready. They told us to go to Niram. We are running. While we are running, I start to listen in my radio to fire. I hear fire in my radio, and I do the math in my head. It's fire in my radio, probably one from my company. Someone from my company is under fire now. Someone from my friends is under fire. And I'm choosing not to speak to the soldiers and not to tell them what happened. Like, be focused on the mission, let's go. We are running, and after a few more minutes, I hear we got 4 men down. I don't know who yet, and again, I'm choosing not to tell my soldiers what happened. Why? I want them to be focused in the mission. We got to the point, and we start to shoot each other, Hamas, us, and other units arrived, and then the tanks arrive, and the drones, and the helicopters joined to the party, and after 20 minutes, everything was settled down, and then became the hard mission. They sent us few officers to identify the bodies. And we're walking on a battlefield zone over there where we fight, and you see parts of bodies, you see legs, then you see a lot of blood and sand, and parts that you don't know what they are. Then you see the terrorists with IDF uniforms. And then we arrived at the jeep. He was still in fire a little bit, and I saw my commander lying on the ground, covered with blood and sand. And I look at him, and the only thing is going in my head, and then now you have to have a haircut. That was the only thing. And I going back now to my soldiers, and I don't know what to tell them, how to tell them what happening now. And soldiers are soldiers. They are like students. They are like kids. They know everything, even that you don't tell them nothing. They have the suspicion that something like that happened, but I didn't confirm to them what happened. And it took me a while to find the right words, and a few hours later we got a new commander, and he stepped out of his van, and he gathered like all the officers, and probably my face was in shock, and I was in shock. I can't tell, but because I can't look on my face. And I remember he stepped out, he raised his hand, slapped on my face. Eden, wake up, everything is good, everything is okay. Tell your soldiers what happened. Tomorrow we're going inside, prepare them. And I look at him, how everything is okay? And he said, I'm not telling you my problem, don't tell me your problem, go to work. Okay? And it took me another 2 hours to find the right words to tell my soldiers. And I finally told them what happened, and I told them that now we don't have the time tomorrow, and we will have it when we finish the operation. We need to be focused on the mission. And 24 hours later, we found ourselves inside of Gaza. 60 days later, the operation was over. And after that, you know, I told you how I got here. I'll be happy to open it for questions and answers, and ask whatever you want. Don't be shy. My motto to my soldiers is that if you shy, you die. So please don't shy and please don't die.
I'm gonna ask you something, may I?
Yes.
I think when you go to speak to the university, especially to Queen's, my daughter was a graduate from Queen's University. It's very left wing here there, and you're gonna be booed right off the stage. You're gonna have to. I mean, they're really vocal there, but you're gonna have to stand your own ground, and you have to concentrate a lot, but a lot, about what Hamas does to these children. Why these children are there, because all you heard throughout the whole protective edge was these radios are killing children, 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 children. You've got to, go over that and pronounce about that and state that over and over again until this is very, very important.
Question.
Yes.
The whole social media aspect of how things are and what's going on in the world today. Israel is so far advanced in everything, including in the developing of most of these social media platforms. Why, and you may or may not be qualified to answer this, why was Israel's response on social media so poor, and why does it continue to be so poor in social media?
They do not have the Hasbara people there.
So I'm going to try to answer it. Yes, we're not, so it's not our strongest side, and yes, in that case, in that war of social media, we are losing, and we need to work harder. And I think it's, I like to compare it to sport. For example, football or soccer. Let's say one team following the rules and the other don't follow the rules, and they cheat. Probably they're gonna win because they don't care about the rules, and our enemy don't care about the rules and the moral code of how you treat human beings, and if you respect the families and if you respect the dead. And our moral is much higher, so that's why you don't see so far pictures of dead children. And it did happen. Even the last operation, even in ceasefire, Daniel was a child who was 4 years old, and he died by a rocket in a ceasefire. But we didn't share this picture, and our enemy used everything to win. I think it's very changed now, and the perspective of the world very changed, because a lot of independent people take the care on them and the responsibility to do it. And I think we are changing. I can see it even now, what's going now in Israel. And for me, it's very hard to be here now. I'm very far away from Israel and what's going on over there. And my friends, most of my friends that are officers, they're still in the army, and like they're sharing their stories in WhatsApp and Facebook all the time to me. But I do see that individual people share like the hard stuff, and it does going viral in the media. Another problem is I develop it to two circles, the small one and the big one. The small one is 30% and the big one is 70%. We are in the small circle of 30%. We share the same thing in the social media to each other. For example, I will share something to you, you will share it to someone else. Eventually, everyone in this room will see it, but people outside of this building will not see it. We need to go outside and share to the 70%. And this is the hard stuff, because it's much easier for us to share to the 30%. And most of the time with those videos, we preach to the choir. The hard work is to share it outside.
Well, when you go on Twitter,
Yes.
I think the problem is we hear stories like yours. They're believable. We hear a lot of stories. Consistently, they are true between each other. So we have a reason to believe that this is true. We also know that the people who disbelieve this have access to the same stories. But the problem is not whether they have the facts or not, it's how they interpret the facts. If people don't want to believe something, it doesn't matter what facts you put in front of them, they're still not going to believe it. And it's time that we actually realize that people don't want to be convinced. So at the end of the day, we have to find psychological ways of actually getting in front of them and allowing them to convince themselves, because we can't convince them. We can only provide them with material that they can use to convince themselves. Now, in terms of what the previous gentleman said, forget about the Facebook and the technology. Those are just the tools. but Mossad and Israeli universities are leaders in psychology. That is more of a tool and a weapon that we should be trying to employ in order to try and convince people of the truth, and bearing in mind that just trying to say, you know, here are the facts, and it's just not working.
So, to answer you, I will say that it's again, you need to develop it. There is 50% who really love Israel in the world. They love us. It doesn't matter what you will share, what you say. And there is the other 50% that really hate us. It doesn't matter what you say. And there is the core middle, the 70%, they don't have opinion. Those who speaks against us, let them speak. Let them do whatever they want. It doesn't matter what we will say. We need to reach the people in the middle. Those 70%, they don't have opinion. And the way to do it is by personal stories and the personal way. And I can share 2 stories that happened this week, actually last week in the university. First one is in York. Yeah. We got a interesting guy. He was from Saya, right?
Oh, yeah.
From where?
Everyone know?
Students Against Israeli Apartheid.
Yeah. And students
Against
against Israeli apartheid. And he was very polite. He actually was very polite.
Was that from Hasbara? No.
No. And he started to ask a lot of questions, and he really tried to find something. And each question we have those answers, and the personal side, he didn't find anything in the end, and he just left, and everything was good. The other university was Ryerson.
Oh boy.
And came to the event, a Muslim kid. He grew up in Muslim's family and in Muslim school, and all his life he was raised to hate Israel. And he came to the event to figure out what's going on, and like he want to hear from the other perspective. When the event was over, he came to me and he said, "Now I understand what is the conflict. Now I understand that I can speak up against my friends and family."
Really?
And I was surprised. Like, these things was never happened to me, but I realize it more and more that when you speak to the personal side and you give the personal stories, that's the way to convince. But yes, we're working on it.
I think most of the world doesn't care what you say. They think what they want to think, regardless of what you say. And their opinion is not based on what they heard, but what they are going to write before you spoke.
I read the newspaper of the last weekend, and I was very interested by how they described Israel in the newspaper. And it was a photo with a guy like have a wood with fire, and in the bottom of the picture they said like 6 Palestinians will die dead, killed by the Israeli force. And a lot of the times they speak that we tell just one side, and I got it so many times. Okay, your story is just one side. So this is a good answer to give the people, like, what about the other side? The newspapers, the televisions, they show just one side. CNN, I love CNN.
Wait till you meet CBC.
You were an officer, a first lieutenant, and you were 21 years old. How old was the commander?
So, it's a good question. Commander in Israeli Defense Force, it's where everyone starts as a private, and then they raise themselves, but sergeant per sergeant, and if you go to commander course, you become a commander. Then you can be commander sergeant, and if you go to officer course, you can be commander first lieutenant, commander second lieutenant. My commander, not the one who died, He was captain, and he was 24. He has 120 soldiers responsibility. He was 24. My commander died. He was 34 almost, and he has almost 500 people. So, yes.
I just am so proud to hear you speak, and really humbled to think that people like you, so young, are speaking out and defending Israel and the Jewish people, where people like me feel like we failed. And I'm just amazed at how well you're doing. It's really appreciated.
Yes.
I'd like to ask you something. You're 23?
23, yes.
Such a self-composed young man. I'm so impressed, like this lady just said, I'm so impressed by your level of, it's unbelievable maturity. I have a 21-year-old son, and he's a great kid. But so, but I think all of us here who are a little older, I'd like to ask you what your perspective is that it seems like no matter how bad things get, it is so much better now. It's so much more successful. Israel is just like this shining example of a success story that, with all the notwithstanding the last week or two, but those are, again, not to minimize, but it's such a unbelievable shining, like, how do you feel about that? Don't you agree?
I like your question. It's like my top 5.
So much better now. I'm 57. I've you know, we've lived, a lot of us older people have seen all these things. It was terrible.
So a few days ago, one of the questions was if you can burn in each country else, which country you will decide it. So my answer was Israel.
Yeah,
the situation is amazing, and very good in Israel. And I think 2 things it's important to know and realize it. One, the media show what it sells. So also in Israel, the media in Israel show what it sells. What it sells is like very expensive, the situation, the security things, or Bibi. That's what it sells. That's what they provided to the people, and it's not true. If you live the life, the quality of life is very good. The second thing, and it's about the last few weeks, it's also about the media and the money. A lot of the money go now to Syria and the refugees from Syria, and Europe is very busy with the refugees in Syria, and Canada and the States very busy about it. And what for the Palestinians? Nothing. And they get less money, less attention, and they want to provide
stories. It's exactly the truth.
they want to provide a little bit, like a little bit noise. We are here, don't forget us, support with us, and Europe can support everyone, and the States and Canada can support anyone. And that's why they created these things, and using the excuse of the Temple Mountain, and I read today article about the people in Nazareth and the Western Galilee, and they said the Arab Israeli, they said I don't know what happened to the Arab parties. They went crazy, they come here, they do a big mess, and then they left, and they don't care about us really, because if they do care about us, they will not do it, because that's our, we have a good relationship with the Jewish people, and we want them to buy in our places, to sit in our coffee places, and now no one goes there. So they're very angry about their own party. But the situation is very good, and I feel more than safe, and I work in the old city. Every day I go to the old city.
Wow.
Where are you in the old city?
In the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem, U office. It's a nice place, nice building they have.
We were just there in the summer, and how do you get a different view across to that 70% of the middle? There was one day, and my wife and I just went, why? We felt like a vacation, so why go spend it in Europe, or why go spend it? We just went to Israel. There were so many people doing exactly what we did, not doing even touring, just spending time in Israel. And one day on the beach, there was a Muslim family, okay, women in their hijabs. There was a Christian family, and obviously the majority were Jews, just enjoying the day on the beach. But the world doesn't see that. So how do you get that 70% to see that?
Do you have non-Jewish friends?
Absolutely, and and we tell them all the time. And I tell them, go and visit Israel.
Share these pictures with them.
Show the pictures.
Show them the pictures. Tell your things, and they will do it. That's the only thing. It's more than that. That's what we can. We can write blogs. We can write articles. We can share our things. I have a German roommate. She's with student exchange now in my apartment, and it took her the first time she arrived to the old city, and she's Christian, she's Catholic, and she went to the Western Wall and she started crying. And she came back and she said, now I understand. People understand it, but they need to do the first step, and the first step is the hardest step to do. Yeah.
Even at the camp I go to, it's run by the JVC, so it's a Jewish camp. And I work with the horses, and the lady who runs the program, her name's Mary, Catholic, I forget her son's name. And her son has been going to the camp, she's worked there forever. And before she didn't really know anything about Judaism or about Israel. But from being there, now I see her post on Facebook, she's sharing all the pro-Israeli posts, just because she's been exposed to Israelis, because there's a large Israeli population there, and to Judaism. From there, this seemingly woman who could never really understand now does. And I think that's something that people put past a lot of the time.
Yeah, the question, and then.
You've probably been asked this question like 1,000 times, but do you really believe that peace is truly achievable? Because we're dealing with the type of people that, like you said, there's no value for human life. It's indoctrinated from an early age to kill all Jews, wipe us off the planet. And on our side, we truly want peace. And we have high moral standards. So how do you think that we can come about to truly achieve peace?
I think peace is a matter of choice, and for beginning we need both sided to want peace. And I think we saw it in history. For example, Egypt, they won peace in 79, we got peace. Jordan won peace, we have peace. The story with Palestinians, the people want peace. The people want to work, they want a quiet life, education, have the job. But they are prison and they are in jail, and those who run the jail is Hamas and Fatah. And they take all the money and they take all the resources who come there. And the people really want it. And example for that, in the last operation, we searched for the tunnels. The main goal of the operation was to find attacking tunnels from Gaza to Israel and destroy them. That was it. In searching, we opened one of the tunnels and we see 4 kids. They were between 9 to 12.
4.
We take them out, and our first thought was maybe they scare, they ran there, and they hide. We asked them, what are you doing here? And they said, this is our tunnel. So what is your tunnel? We built this tunnel. How would you build this tunnel? And then they told us, they kidnapped us in one of the nights. They trade our families and us. And we're working here 19 hours and we have 5 hours to sleep. And if we're trying to escape, they can kill us or our families. And I hear that, and this is kids. And at that point I had the understanding they are prison in their own jail. And those who run it, it's Hamas and Fatah. And my hope is for peace. And that's my only hope, that my kids can play with Palestinians in Israel. There will be no borders. And I'm sure that my mom told me that when I was a kid, that when you be 18, there will be no need for the army. And I want to say it to my kids also. But they need to decide that they want to make a revolution there, and understanding that Israel is not the problem, Israel is the solution.
So I'm very confused now. You say that, you know, a lot of the Palestinians want peace, but what I see is they're throwing rocks and they're screaming at the Temple Mount. So who are these people? Are these people under Fatah, under Hamas? Are they ordinary? They don't belong to any organization? Who are these tons of people who are doing all this problem? They don't seem to want peace.
It's a good question. It's random people, but they're recruiting by Facebook and other social media programs by Hamas and Fatah, and it's vulnerable kids. And I think today everybody want to have a meaningful life, to do something for something for someone. Everyone want to be part of something, and that's the way how they get to the kids. But that's the problem, that you only see what the media show you, and that's our problem, that we still don't see. I live in a very nice community that's in my village. There is Christians, Arab, Muslims, and Druze. We're living together. My friends, one of my good friends' mom, she's Christians, Arab. She came from Lebanon, and but also we have Muslims and Druze that living together. I see it like from them. I get it from them. They want it. They have good life and better life from the most countries, the Arab country around us, and they have women rights, gay rights, education. The economy is good. They don't have problems, and there is like Arabs, they step up and they do say it. Yes.
But if life is so good for the Arabs in Israel, why are they rioting in Nazareth, in Haifa, in Ramle, in Jerusalem? They're rioting right now, today actually. Rioting across Israel. These are the Arabs who have a good life, who have the education, who have the economic advantage, and yet they're still rioting.
Right.
And in fact, I saw an interview with the mayor, I believe it was the mayor of Nazareth, who was snapping at one of the Arab joint list members of Knesset, who was doing an interview in Nazareth, and the mayor, who is a very decent guy apparently, slammed him for inciting the Israeli Arab population. So how do you reconcile that?
That's right.
Israel right now is burning with Israeli Arabs are rioting.
I think it's most of them. That's what I know. What I know also from my friends, they're still officers. It's young youth. It's between 16 to 20, maybe 24. They're taking for granted what their parents accomplish in their life, and their parents very mad. And there is one video in Hebron, you can see old guy trying to stop like border patrols officers from shooting the young youth. So like, enough, let him. I will finish it, but yes, it's the young youth that's rising up, because it's really easy to recruit them by Facebook.
That's the majority of it. That's the majority. The youth, you know, it's a young, it's a young population, and between 18 to 24. This is what people see, whether we're Christian, Jews, Muslims. This is what we see day after day after day.
It's true.
And this is the majority. So
I don't know if it's the majority. I know that.
Well,
the problem is, I think, that all of these problems underlie the fact that how do you reach an agreement where it appears that there's no structure, there's no leadership, there's no, who are you agreeing with? And do they have the authority to agree to some kind of peace? And do that, is the Palestinian leadership representative, and can you reach an agreement with them?
I can give you my point of view, and the only mine. I'm not a prime minister of Israel yet.
yeah.
You're still young.
I'm still young. Yeah, maybe in a few years.
Not 2 years.
I'm not a prime minister, and I really don't know what's going in the secret rooms. And what I've been heard, it's like that they want, but they don't want. And I think they had the opportunity. I know they had the opportunity from 47 to now to have a Palestinian state. So if they really want it, it's already there, a Palestinian state, and Israel will support the Palestinian state if there was one. But they don't really want to. They want to provoke troubles and make money. And the question is always where the money goes. where the money go, to heads of Hamas, to head of Fatah. How it could be possible, I'm not saying it's not possible, but how it could be possible that one guy from Gaza is one of the richest people in the world? It's kind of ridiculous. And where he's living, Saudi Arabia. Of course, he's not living in Gaza anymore. But the money go to them. And they have the money, they have the control. It's always, where's the money go? This is my answer, but I prefer not to speak more about the conflict. I know it's like, it's also me, I'm also burning inside of me, like, not because I don't want to, because I don't have enough the knowledge to keep speaking about it. I can speak about everything else.
If it's not too personal,
Yes.
I was wondering how your experience in the army has affected you.
Can you speak up?
I was asking how his experience in the army affected him spiritually.
If I believe in God.
I don't know your background. I don't know what kind of home you come from.
So, before my army, I didn't believe in God. And in the last operation, I kind of discovered and understanding what is God for me. And all my life I was living in coincidence. I thought that my life is coincidence. It happened. I have a girlfriend now. I have a good job. I'm going to this unit because it's coincidence, and it's not God. And in the last operation, I had the understanding what is it. And we were supposed to go inside, and after 24 hours, supposed to go inside. And we're standing and have a motivation speak with our new commander. It's a necessary thing to have a motivation speak before you go inside, to inspire your soldiers. And we are 500 meters from the fence, and it's open field, it's a dunes. And then they start bomb us with rockets. They knew where we are exactly, and because it's so close to the fence, to the border, there is no sirens. What happened? You heard the first one falling and it explodes, and then you start to listen to the whistles of the rockets, and then you start to timing. What is the time between each rocket? And the only thing that you can do, it's like spread, lying on the ground, cover your head with your hands, pray. Please not me. Please not me. And every time that I have like 2 seconds between each rocket to rocket, I would look up, see my soldiers are okay. Please not me, please not my soldiers. Please not me, please not my soldiers. It was the longest 10 minutes in my life, because you can run, you can do anything. And every time that I raised my head, I saw the rockets around us, falling around us. And each rocket falling around us. In the end of the 10 minutes, with everything over, we stood up and we see all the rockets around us. And none of my soldiers in the company, even in the brigade, was injured. And all the rockets was around us. And the only 2 guys who was injured was 2 Thai workers who work in the field. And in that moment, I have understanding, but it took me a while to process more that my life is not coincidence, and this is not coincidence. And yes.
How do you help your soldiers overcome the fear of going into battle? Because they must, I can't imagine what it's like.
It's a good question. You remind them why. And the first night after the rocket, we went inside, and it was almost 14, maybe more days that we didn't sleep so much. And my soldiers was very tired, and we trained, and we carry a lot of weight. And we've been tackled inside of Gaza with Hamas. A few minutes later, Just the officer went to see the next destination, and I left my soldiers in the back. I came back. All of them sleep. I find them sleeping. We're inside of Gaza. Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes after we've been in fire, they're all of them sleeping. Those who are supposed to be awake, sleeping and standing. And I came and I saw all of them sleeping. I woke them up, and I was very angry. And I took a big risk, and I told everyone, come closer. And I show him, look to the left, what you see? They see the lights of Bet Hanun. Look to the right, what you see? Ashkelon, Mahsom Erez, Niram, Netivot. What is in the middle? And I got like someone who's trying to be a smart ass. They depends. Said, no, we are in the middle. If we will not be here, the kids in Sderot, Ashkelon will be dead. So next time, don't be asleep. And you always need to remind them why. And another funny story, but it is really funny. We are inside the same night after they sleep. One of my soldiers, he ran to me from the end. And Eden. Tell him what? I have a diarrhea. I look at him from all of the things, diarrhea, and said, I have to do it now. And we are now under fire, and you come to me that you have a diarrhea.
Explosion 2 ways.
No one teach me that in officer course, what to do. And I told him, like, pull your pants now next to me, do it here. And he did it, and yeah, but they fear, they needed sometimes the parent advice, and sometimes that's only you, that you over there. Sometimes it's older commander, but there are more brothers, and I'm kind of a big brother to them. She has over there a question. She's like waiting for hours. Yes, Monique.
How do you deal with your emotions after the war last year?
Hug my mom, and I play with my dogs, and I went to do showers, and we ate Friday dinner, and then I went back to my room. I lying in a bed, close my eyes, and then I will start crying.
That's right.
And I'm not a guy who share my emotions so much by crying. And I was crying, and I was just cracked there in my bed, and I don't know what to do. And I woke up the next morning, and my friends told me, okay, tonight we're going to a pub. All my friends wasn't in my friends from my home, from Favadim, it wasn't in operation because they finished the service before me. And say, okay, then let's go for a drink. And I couldn't go out. I couldn't drink the beer. I had the feeling that I can't keep going my life. I can't drink a beer. I can't meet another girl. I can't eat another cake that my friends and my commander can. And luckily I was going back in Sunday to the base, and they set my head for a few more months because you're busy with your soldiers and you're busy with everything. And then I released from my service. A few days later, he was back again. And then how you can keep your life? They're dead. They're gonna stay 21 forever. How you can taste something that they never taste? How you can go travel now in the world? They can't go travel in the world anymore. And I always start to crying in not in the right places. In the train, when I listen to songs that one of my friends, when I eat something that I used to eat with my commander. And it was really hard. And after a while, I had the understanding that I have to keep my life going. I can't stop over there. And for me, it was to talking about them. And every time that I talk about them,
it gets easier.
And someone asks questions about them, and I tell the stories, I feel like they are with me. And I know they are watching each time, the time that I speak, and each time it's coming with a dinner, they eat what I eat. And each time that I listen to music, they are with me, and I brought them free to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that was the way to remember myself and also keep living my life.
Is there an organization in Israel where soldiers can go for if they have post-traumatic stress disorder? Is there somebody helping soldiers?
There is, and the army also works very good with it. The first Shabbat that we need to go home, everyone closed, because they wanted to speak about it, and it was a big concern. We got a lot of psychologists, and we spoke about everything. Then we went back home. But there is few people that always, each one is taken individual. I think we have time for a last question. Yes.
In light of what you went through, and you were in Gaza, and you saw it with your own eyes, you saw the children, the human shields, the women. There comes an organization called Breaking the Silence, which I'm sure you know, and they travel all over the world. They're heavily funded by the Europeans, and they smear the IDF, accusing them of war crimes. How do you deal with that? Because they have an excuse, because they're Israeli, they're also IDF. So they're traveling all over the place on a speaking tour in Europe, and people look at them and say, look, you have IDF soldiers accusing the IDF of committing war crimes. So how do you deal with that? How do you counteract their propaganda? And how do you feel about this organization?
How I feel? Love and hate relationship. Why love? Because they do something it's important. What is important is there is things that's going not good in the IDF, because each organization, in a big organization, something not good going to be happen, and there is also kids who coming there, but what I hate is they're going outside and they don't give the details and they don't speak about it before they went outside. I don't think they love Israel. I think they see it very differently in their own eyes, and it's I had one breaking the silence once, and in the United States, and one of the students did an amazing job. He worked with us, and he searched about this guy. This guy telling a story in 2002, what happened there, and he was in Maglan, one of the elite units in Israel, and he said he was officers, and this guy started to search about this. The students started to search about the guy from breaking the silence, and he called all officers from 2000 to 2004 in Maglan. Maglan is a small unit, especially if you're officers, everyone know everyone. They said this guy doesn't exist.
He's just lying.
They came to the event, he spoke what he has to spoke, the students asked a question, I spoke with the officers, and he said his names from this year to this year, and he said you were in the unit.
Why?
Can you explain?
Huh.
And he said, it's not my story, it's my friend's story. So some of the stories, they are not true. Some of them are true, but we need to search. And the other problems that I have, it's not with the soldiers who said it, it's with their commanders not explaining during the war, during the situation, why we're doing it. And it's how you tell a story. You can tell a story without explaining anything, and you got one perspective, and the other you can explain everything. For example, the story that I read from the report, we came in night to the house, And of course we didn't come by the door, we broke the wall. And of course we didn't left the windows, we didn't open the windows, we broke a small holes near to that, and we fire every half an hour we fire. You hear it? Wow, it's terrible, but if you have understanding, each door was boom trapped with bombs. So you have to make holes in the walls. You don't want to open the window, because if you open the window next to the window, they shoot on you. So you make small walls near to the wall, and you shoot every half an hour, because you're not shooting about someone, you're shooting to make sure that no one comes to shoot on you. So if you don't have an understanding that, and the other thing, people don't have understanding, it's war. And war is war, it's not nice. And you have to understand what is a war. So I want to finish, and I want 3 points that you can take with you. First is to have the knowledge to speak, and I think most of us has it, but those who don't, we need to read more and explore more. The second, have the personal stories. Doesn't matter if you know everything about Israel and you know all the facts. If you don't have it in a personal side, it doesn't affect. And the third thing, and this is how I see it, we are, as a Jewish people, we are a Jewish army. And a Jewish army, as an army, everybody has a role to play. Yes, some of us go to the IDF, and the IDF is protecting all of us, but there is other roles that you can play. Could be Facebook, could be Instagram, could be writing articles, could be writing a blog. You don't have to wear uniform to defend Israel. You need to find your way to defend it. And each one of us has it in a different way to do it. So I want to say thank you again for coming.
For coming. We're just going to finish off now with a brief session. So you've now taken this incredible story and say, okay, how can you make this message effective yourself? Talk about the importance of personal narratives. Guys, this is the security barrier here, one of the most iconic pictures in the conflict. Now, what isn't shown here is the reason, the deaths prevented, etc., etc. And nonetheless, this is the most pervasive message. So the facts. How wide is Israel at its narrowest? 9 miles. Anybody know that? Israel's 9 miles wide at its narrowest. But you tell your average friend who says to you, listen, why is Israel doing blank? Why is Israel incursion into Gaza? Why is Israel doing the following? And you say, Israel's 9 miles wide, 15 kilometers. What are you going to get? A screensaver, scrolling marquee over their eyes. Very nice. They don't know what 9 miles means. That means nothing, right? We can't compete with dead babies. We can't compete with these kind of heart-wrenching pictures that our opponents are showing when we talk about things like this. It's unfortunately just not going to work. It's the facts. It's emet. It's the truth. Unfortunately, it's not good enough. Reality. Now, this is a little blurry, but this is in the West Bank, in an Arab village, and you can see, you know what that is there? That's the Mediterranean Sea. And this is Ben Gurion Airport. Now, if I was standing there, which one would be more compelling? Right? If I was standing here and saying, well, you know, Israel's 9 miles wide, 15 kilometers, very nice. Or I could say to you, take a look at this. Which one is more compelling? Does anybody think the first is more compelling? I don't think so. Again, this is just actually our group. We went to a town in a Jewish town in the West Bank called Alfei Menashe. Anybody ever heard of it? Ever been there? So we were there, and it's remarkable, and that's our group this past summer. We do 2 trips in the summer, and we were there. And again, it gives people an opportunity. Like, when you are there seeing it for yourself, it is literally nothing else. So is anybody familiar with these kinds of pictures here? Put up your hand if anybody knows what this is. So this is an Arab from the West Bank, Israel, and he is holding a key. Do you know what that key is? Or what he is claiming that key is? He's saying that this key... Sorry? Yeah, exactly. He's saying this was my house before those dastardly Zionists kicked me out in 1948. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you have on one side this man holding a key and certificate of registration from his plot of land in Lod or Jaffa or anywhere else saying, this was my home before the Jews kicked me out in 1948. And I'm standing here on the other side, and I'm saying you have to understand there were a lot of complex political and historical. Who's going to win the argument?
He is.
He's going to win the argument. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how they've been winning the argument, by holding these keys. And in fact, they've made an entire thing about it. Throughout the West Bank, throughout Gaza, throughout Hebron and Ramallah, these keys have come to represent their homeland that the Jews have taken away from them. It's iconic, and it reflects truly what their narrative has come to become. Fascinating, isn't it? I think this is a bit of a... My wife doesn't think this next part is funny. I actually think... Actually, it has spurred an entire giant foam and giant novelty checks. I actually think it's a bit of a funny thing. These checks, I don't know why they're always so huge. It's like a foot-long check, or a foot-long key. So I say, oh, they actually started the giant foam and giant check. Whatever, just a little comic relief there. So, and meanwhile... This is what we've done. Thank you for the pity laugh. We all appreciate it. All right, so I'll stick with my day job. Thank you very much. This is how we've been responding. This is the IDF. I spent a year working at the Israeli Embassy in Ottawa. I was a speechwriter during the flotilla. So people ask me, why is Israeli PR so bad? I have one or two thoughts about that. And really, I think this reflects it, is that we have not been telling personal stories. Right? Like Commander Adler's, you were here captivated by his story. Again, if he talked about simply, these numbers and stats, most of you know it already, and most of you would say, that's very nice, but it doesn't speak to your heart, doesn't speak in your kishkas. These will win over this any day. This week, this is what the IDF put out. Actually, just today, it was on the IDF Facebook page. This week in Israel, they have an app. You can report an attack. So if it's by a gun, if it's by a car ramming, if it's explosives, etc., etc. So again, this is current. This is 10, 12 hours ago. We're sort of very much in the infographic stage. We're really in the graphics, and there is benefit to that, but unfortunately, it just does not have that same level of emotional appeal, drama that our opponents have been able to do. So again, I'm moving through this fairly quickly. I know we started a little bit late, so I wanted to just sort of get the idea. Fundamentally, there are three main arguments that anti-Israel opponents will make about Israel. Again, whether it's about Al-Nakba, the Jews kicked us out, whether it's about Jewish communities, settlement, whatever it is, typically they fall into three. One of them is racism, so that the Jews are above the Arabs, second-class citizens, and so on. Occupation, right? It's our what time is it? Time to end the occupation. What is it like outside? It's sunny here, but it's gray in Gaza because it's occupied, etc. They're sticking to that consistent message. And third is excessive force, right? Even when Israel does something, heavy-handed, 2,000 people killed last winter in Gaza or last summer versus 70, etc. So these are the three sort of consistent arguments that they've been making. So how do you tell your own story? Put up your hand. Is anybody here, you don't have to admit it, has anybody here not been to Israel before? That's fine? Okay, great. Even if you haven't, nothing to be ashamed of. Even if you haven't been to Israel before, fundamentally that's not an issue. The idea is that obviously if you have, that is an incredible opportunity to be able to take a story. And why do we tell these stories? This is for us to know. It's for our own edification. It's for us to be strengthened by our own convictions. Of course, it's not about our opponents. We're talking about, as people said, it's about that 70, 75, 80% in the middle. People who, when they hear stories, Mohammed holding a key from his father's house in Jaffa or Jerusalem, and we have we're talking about infographics, we can't compete that way. So what are the basic elements of successful storytelling? Anybody heard of Sat Jul? He's a marketing sort of guru, and these are some of the basic sort of good elements of storytelling that he has. And when we say storytelling, we're not talking about, Mrs. Jones in a kindergarten class. We're talking about the fundamental basics of marketing or sales. Because what we are doing is we're selling an idea. We are selling something intangible. No one can touch it, feel it, or experience it, but they can see it for themselves. So what are the 5 key elements? It's simple, it's emotional, it's truthful, it's real, and valid. We'll go through that quickly. Simple. So what does that mean? When you have a story that you're sharing, it's easy to understand. Someone can chop it. They can understand it. They can really internalize what you mean when you're telling that story. It matches the understanding of the audience. So for example, the audience here, almost everyone here has been to Israel. So if I'm telling a story about Israel, I don't necessarily have to say, when I was in Jerusalem, and for those of you who don't know, Jerusalem is a large city in the center of it. I have to know my audience, and I have to create it based on that, but it has to be simple. It can't be overly complex like this. People simply aren't going to get that. They're not going to understand it. They're not going to follow it. And the reason it needs to be simple is so it's memorable, right? Commander Adler, when he was speaking, I mean, he had a lot of different stories, and a lot was very complex. But you know, when he shared the story of he was saying the Hamas fighters, you know, launching that or attempting to launch that rocket from the apartment building, it was a simple story, right? A lot of complex things happened behind it, but he was able to crystallize it into his most fundamental. So, you know, well done, good element of storytelling. But that's the idea. It's memorable. Is anybody here not going to remember that tomorrow? I'm going to remember that, I'm sure, for a long, long time. The idea is we want to keep it simple. KSS, keep it simple, silly, right? Emotional. What is emotional? Again, when you see that key, when you hear, you know, an anti-Israel activist talking about, you know, their personal experience, it's memorable because it's emotional. It's scary, it's controversial, it's funny, I mean, typically theirs has been painful, it's sad, it's these kind of things that really, you know, heartstrings. If I tell you a story that doesn't really speak to you, that's not going to have the effect. So what is the one? It's simple, and it has to tug on your heartstrings. Third is truthful. So what does that mean? It means that if I'm telling you a story and I say I felt this, I experienced this, it doesn't work if it's not true. If I'm telling people, well, you know, when I was in Israel and I saw this, and I didn't really get anything of it, you know, and then I'm telling people that I did, I'm a Pinocchio. It's not, people are going to see right through that. What I need to do is I need to be truthful and really pick a story that really did have the biggest effect on me. Not to pick a story that didn't, and then maybe sort of create a whole elaborate picture. Does that make sense to everybody? If there's a story that makes sense to me, take that and build it, and that's what can be successful. Real. So there's a comic here, shot twice and left for dead. Not really, but it sounds better than choked on a gummy bear, right? These stories, well, we can't embellish stories, right? If you experience something in Israel, you heard tonight, you know, and it can't be, you know, you go to Israel and you saw something. You know, for example, this past summer on Hasbara Fellowships, we were in the Golan Heights, we saw white smoke from the Syrian side of the border. You remember that, Lior? So we saw white plumes of smoke coming, and in Jordan, I didn't see you there. So we saw the Syrian civil war in action. We heard bangs. Now, in 2 years' time, if I'm telling you, we saw the rockets and we saw the airplanes and the fighter, I mean, that's embellished and it's not true. And it's just not going to have the same effect because it's not true. People are going to see through that. But the idea here is that, actually, just a couple weeks ago, there was a story, a guy in the States, for 14 years, made up an entire story how he was in 9/11. Anybody hear about this? He was supposed to be... And these lies will catch up to us and fundamentally not going to be successful. So they need to be first-hand experiences. They need to be your experiences. And we'll talk about if it's not yours, how to do that. How do we then take advantage of stories like Commander Adler's tonight? Nobody was here with him. So does that mean we can't use these stories? No, we can repurpose them. And how do we do that? We don't talk and say, well, I heard this Israeli soldier saying the following story, ABC. What we do is, we don't talk about his story. We talk about the story that he shared about how you felt. I remember being 22 years old and 21 years old. I can't imagine done this. Or I have a son or daughter who's 21 years old, 22 years old. I can't imagine. In other words, personalizing. You are taking his story and you are, in a sense, making it yours, but you have to make it yours. You can't simply regurgitate his story. You have to take his story and the elements of it which speak to you and then share, you know, it was impactful for me because I experienced this, etc., etc. I felt this when I saw him because I can't imagine being in his situation. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. And valid. Again, Seth Godin's quote here, marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but about the stories you sell. So valid means it works in any audience. So the idea is that when I tell a compelling story, it has to work in any time, any young, old, it's knowledgeable, not knowledgeable, etc. What does that mean? Pick the right story. So if I'm telling you a story, let's say I'm talking to somebody, a friend of mine, that, you know, I was talking to somebody yesterday at shul, and he said his sister lives in Ottawa, she lives on a farm, she's a big environmentalist. Next door to her farm, there's he described it as a jihadi training camp. It looks like a training camp. You have these these conservative Muslims, and they have like a jungle gym sort of. This is 100% true, like a jungle gym sort of thing in the property. Like, she's a big acreage there. And I told him, I said, that sounds incredibly serious. Has your sister called the RCMP? And he said, yeah, you know, she called them, but she wasn't too serious. You know, she thinks it's really overblown. She thinks environment is really the biggest issue. Fine, that's her opinion. May agree or disagree. By the fact that you're here, you probably would disagree, but that's where she thinks. So how are we going to be successful? Are we going to be successful by telling her, no, that's not the most important issue, this is the most... What we do is, we say to her, you are right, environment is so important. And then you craft a story that speaks to that issue. If she thinks environmentalism is an issue, You think back to your time in Israel or a story you heard about Israel, and that's the story you tell her. And that's what's going to be most effective. You don't tell a story necessarily about diversity or nanotech. You talk about how the desert bloom, how you saw something, you experienced something, you felt something. Again, it's based on, we don't simply want to take this and sort of just vomit all this information out at somebody. We have to use something called a consultative sales process. If I'm trying to sell something to you, Angelina, I have to ask you, what are you looking for? What's your budget? Etc., etc. The same thing. If I'm trying to sell you a car, you don't just come into my dealership and I yell this information. I ask you, what's your budget? What do you use your car for? How often do you drive it? How many people drive in your car, etc.? We need to ask them questions. Fundamentally, it's the only way. And fundamentally, that's how our opponents have been able to build relationships with groups like Queers Against Israel Apartheid. I tell people, on what planet does a group like that make sense? It doesn't make any sense. But they've been able to do it by customizing, by building these personal relationships, and by fundamentally doing that. So it's these personal stories. Literally, this is not fun and games. This is literally how our opponents are winning the war, by telling personal, compelling stories that we have failed to do. So again, let me just do a very brief overview here. What are the 5 elements of good storytelling? It has to be simple. Story can't be complex. I saw this. Simple, that you can regurgitate, that somebody can say and remember. 2, emotional. Tug on somebody's heartstrings. That's the only way it's going to work. 3rd, truthful. You have to be honest about yourself. If it didn't really speak to you, you can't make it and say, oh, I really experienced this. You have to say something that really was meaningful for you. And 4, obviously it needs to happen to you, or if it didn't happen to you, you need to speak about not someone else's story, but you can repurpose theirs and say how you felt when hearing that, because it spoke to you in a certain meaningful way. And valid, of course, that it needs to work across wide audiences. And pick the right story, make sure it works for the audience then. So again, here's an image. Anybody know this picture? This is from the first Intifada, or second Intifada, rather, 2000. I think it was a 12 or 13-year-old boy throwing a rock at an IDF tank. This came to represent the second Intifada. In the images of almost everybody who followed the news 15 years ago, this was the conflict. The conflict was not about the 1,000 Israelis who died at Sbarro Pizza and about the discotheque. People did not remember that. People remember this. Why? Because that played into their message. Remember, there were 3. There was racism, there was excessive force, and there was occupation. This is certainly at least 2 of them. That's the idea. They have stuck to a message, they have kept to it, and they have built personal stories based on that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the only key, if you will, to success. Okay?
But doesn't Israel have their own people who take pictures of, they can take the same type of picture, but instead of, when you hear, oh, the Muslims just throw little rocks, and what little rocks, but they really throw huge stone rocks. So where are the Israeli photographers that can tell a story to the entire world?
I can't speak for the Israeli government. The idea has to be crowdsourced, right?
This is something that, but it's important because you have imagery coming out of Gaza like this, and we don't have any imagery coming out of our side.
We do. Listen, in a war zone, it's difficult. But again, Vardeep, we're talking about what we have. Yes, Amir, go ahead.
Robert, I wanted to ask you about an image that has impacted me, and how would I use the principles that you talked about.
Okay.
The page Stand With Us shared a picture of an Israeli in a hospital bed with a kitchen knife at the back of his head.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I think it's an extremely powerful image. How do we use your principles to talk about it?
So, for example, a picture like that, we would, or any kind of, really, you're talking about any picture where we have an Israeli, because again, what Vardit said, no, the images that we're getting from sort of the Gaza, sort of a closed war zone like that, we don't have control over. What we have control over are the ones of Israeli suffering, right? The stories that we have as well. So what do? We take a story like that, and we post that picture. I wasn't there, we didn't experience that. We post that and we say, what an incredible image. I can't, last time I remember being that age, and I experienced, and I was, I would cry when, I couldn't sleep for a week before getting a needle, right, in school. I can't imagine being a 14-year-old boy and having a knife stuck in my, imagine, I am a parent to a X-year-old child. I couldn't sleep knowing, etc. In other words, it's not co-opting his story, it's taking his story and saying how you feel it in your life. Does that make sense? Because in other words, it's not going to be the same if you say, well, this is a sad picture. Of course it is, but why does it speak to you? What experiences do you have and how can you relate to it? Okay? So the idea is that they've been able to take these pictures, and again, that sort of ties in as well, is that whether you've been there 10 years ago, or listen, if you haven't been there before, you were last there 10 years ago, you don't have any picture, whatever it is, the idea is that there is an incredible amount of information out there. The idea is we can take that data, we can build it for ourselves, we can customize it, package it, and that. And so, and again, we do a whole social media, how you share it on Facebook. Because again, if I share something on Facebook, you lovely people, I would like you to see, but I also want my undecided non-Jewish friends to see. Right? That's a whole different thing about how we can do that. Because the truth is, for the most part, we're talking to our audience and they're talking to their audience. It's the 70-75% of the people we want to talk about, and that's a whole different. Yes, Rabbi.
There's something missing in the conversation, and I ask this constructively, but maybe off topic. Our enemies have a unique advantage, and that is that there is implanted in the world a hatred of Jews that goes back thousands of years. When people talked about apartheid in South Africa, there was apartheid in South Africa. There isn't apartheid in Israel. And the only way there is to believe that there is apartheid in Israel is to aim it at Jews. We don't talk about this very much. We talk about Israel and the Palestinians. But one of the underlying shields which deafens people to our story is that they've been brought up on anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism is so deeply ingrained in the non-Jewish world that it is a barrier to get past this message.
I certainly can't deny that anti-Semitism is prevalent among many people, but the reality is I think that, let me give you the BDS.
I'm talking even in terms of subtlety.
Right.
You know, I'm not talking about someone who says, I hate Jews. But I can believe the worst about Jews. It's different than hating Jews.
Absolutely.
Right? I can't believe the worst about Swedes for some reason.
Right.
Or Canadians.
Right.
But about Jews, I can. Right?
I mean, that's the truth. You're right. We are in an uphill struggle. In the same sense that we are drastically, people say to me, well, you guys, somebody said to me once, a non-Jewish filmmaker, he said, you guys, you put so much resources into Jewish students on campus, sort of the SPHR, SJP, SIA, anti-Israel groups on campus, they don't have that. I said, quite the opposite. They have Saudi Gulf oil money, right? I mean, there's no comparison. We are, make no ifs or buts about it, the David and Goliath scenario. We are outgunned, outnumbered, outfinanced, out everything. They have Al Jazeera pumping down 700 million people. There's no comparison. I think that behooves us, our, if you will, hishtadlut, or obligation of, taking action, is that we thus must be that much more strategic. In the sense that I hate sort of using, Holocaust as an analogy all the time, but the idea was sort of, it was a rabbi, Rav Shach, who said, if Hitler could kill 6 million, certainly think what we can do, right? Our opponents, they have created something, and the BDS movement is a perfect example. BDS movement looks very grassroots, doesn't it? It looks very grassroots. It looks like very organic, a bunch of students who are just fed up with Israel apartheid. Truth is, it was started in 2004 by Omar Barghouti and Ramallah West Bank. Today, the BDS motions are literally almost the exact same template, simply worded, changed for school, university, and, dates and other pertinent details like that. So what they've been able to do, they've taken something very formulaic, and they've made it look very organic. And so that's, I think, the challenge, is that, you're right, we have all these obstacles, and the one you mentioned, there's sort of a pervasive anti-Semitism, even among undecided people, that's evident. It may be evident. I mean, again, I don't know how, and I try to judge people favorably, but the reality is that, yes, we are facing the uphill battle, not our opponents. They have set the agenda for the last 40 years, right? Not us. They have put us on the defensive. They've told the stories, and they've latched on to thousands of years of anti-Jewish hate that's been pervasive in the world. Yes. So I think that at that point we need to be that much more strategic, and I think we need to punch above our weight in a very significant, meaningful way.
I mean, by the way, I agree with you that really the only way to effectively do this is not the statistics. The statistics are all on our side, and they're ineffective. But you cannot argue with a true personal story at the end of the day. You can argue this is one side, that's one side. But his vision of what he experienced, right, it can't be challenged, really, in a sense, in terms of its accuracy, because he was there. Right? And that gives it tremendous credibility and power. Absolutely. So, in the end, I agree with you that the only way to deal with this is very personal.
Absolutely. Darren.
Another thing, looking at this photo right here and thinking about what they're doing, we've seen so many times where they will stage, they will create, they'll frame the perfect propaganda.
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Yeah. I don't think the challenge is we don't want to stoop to this level, but I can think of a couple powerful examples that most people probably haven't seen. The day of the Twin Towers, 9/11, September 11, 2001, you have the video of the Palestinians or the Muslims in
Gaza,
New York City.
celebrating.
They were celebrating and handing out candy.
Ramon.
So that's one example. I mean, sometimes maybe we just need to expose the fraud. I can think of the staged funeral where the guy they kept dropping the body and the body finally gets back up on the.
Right.
I mean, we just maybe one of
Or
the
the
most
body that
powerful
blew
things
up.
we can do is we have to have. Where are the pictures of, we always hear about Gaza being terrible, horrible conditions. Aren't they like almost like resort facilities over there? I mean, where's the pictures of it? We need to do a better job. I don't want to do propaganda. We just need to expose their propaganda. Is that not?
I mean that's certainly part of it. But I think that what's successful about theirs, what they've been able to do, again, it's personalized and emotional. We show theirs and we say, hey, everybody, here's a Disneyland or water park in Gaza. And I think for people who are already on our side, it's going to validate our existing. I mean, any one of us saw that would say, oh, these guys are just they're selling us a bill of goods here. But for somebody who's undecided, it lacks the personal touch, because you weren't there, you didn't experience it, and it lacks the emotional. Those are the two probably most important components of it. So I think perhaps if you want to take that and personalize it, you would say, I saw this. I remember growing up dirt poor or being an immigrant or whatever it is. I remember this. How dare they co-opt poverty? And in other words, that's how you make it personal. You don't just share and say, wow, look at these, Pallywood, these guys sort of, spinning a whole elaborate tale. You make it personal and say, wow, I remember being poor. I didn't have a water park. I remember growing up in wherever. I didn't get a water. That's how you make it personal. So everything you take, it's related to your life. Make sense?
So with apartheid, for example, I grew up in apartheid. I know about apartheid. I don't read about Israeli farmers dragging somebody by the leg behind their SUVs down dirt roads until they're dead. I don't read about that. I don't read about trucks driving around checking every Arab's pass to see if they are eligible to work in a particular area, and pulling people regardless of what they were doing and where they were into a truck. You see a truck with 10 people, or 15 people being taken off to a police station.
Of course.
I don't see that kind of stuff.
No, of course.
So, I mean, there are lots of examples. To this guy's point, we don't use those examples.
Right, absolutely. I think that, listen, we're here, think of it tonight. We had a nice turnout tonight, good people who are here and fighting with the Jays game, but fundamentally, you understand, you are the 1%. People, you are sitting here right now, you are the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. I'm not saying this to butter you up or have you pat yourselves on the back. I'm saying that because it is the few who determine the future, right? It is not the people who, read the news, see the pictures Amir talked about, see the, terrible things happening in Israel and say, oh, well, what's for dinner? Oh, well, et cetera, et cetera. It's the people who fundamentally feel it, and those are the ones who can determine it. Of course, needs to be a grassroots effort. Everybody needs to be engaged. And again, that's the idea, is that building leaders is what we're all about. But I think the idea is that, guys, you are the nucleus of that action. If you are sitting here right now, sorry to sort of put that, 300-pound weight on your shoulders, but we're the ones who can have that, right? Yeah, and last question. Yes. Yeah,
okay, so let's say, I understand what you're doing with Facebook and so on. Let's say you want to deal with the BBC and the CBC. And let's say you could do what Honest Reporting does. So let's say you could take one individual story.
Yeah.
And you could talk to them how it's biased, but the entire mindset, is so sort of left-wing anti-Israel that they're just going to come back the next day with another story.
Right.
So how do you combat that? Is that using stories?
Well, media is actually, it's funny. So actually this, this coming week we're actually launching Hasbara and Honest Reporting. We're actually launching an internship for students on campus media. So that's very exciting. So it's funny you mention that. As far as media, that's a whole sort of different. We're talking about sort of, if you will, retail engagement, one-on-one, posting on Facebook. We're really fundamentally talking to people. As far as media, it's a bit of a horse of a different color. That's sort of a whole different discussion because there's different We're talking traditional media. If you're talking social media, these storytelling techniques apply, best practice. If we're talking retail engagement each eye, that's where it applies. As far as traditional media, it would be too different. I mean, that'd be sort of a whole different discussion. And so again, and I want to leave you with this quote, Margaret Mead. She was, I think she was Irish. Never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So I want to leave you guys with that this is not meant to depress you, that we are on this, as I said to the rabbi, we are an uphill battle. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we've always been fighting that uphill battle. But today, we know the best practices, okay? We know what our opponents have been doing successful. Yes, we have everything stacked up against us. But isn't that the history of Israel and the Jewish people? So there's nothing wrong with that at all. But you know what? It just means we need to stand up. We need to know best practices. And ladies and gentlemen, we can set the agenda, not our opponents, and we can put them on the defensive and not have us on the defensive. So I want to thank you so much again, everyone, for coming, both to Commander Adler and to us. And just a couple points here as well. So if you liked what you saw, we can do more. We can do customized training workshops, schools, churches, schools, what have you. Help us provide training for students. And again, we do true training trips this winter. So if you know students, university, who would be a good fit for that, and we do 2 in the summer as well, please let them know. All our pamphlets are set in the front as well. So thank you so much again, everyone, for coming.